ena, dva, ena. Se tu neki bo po moje, veš. Daj mi še Denhofa, da probam Denhofa. Denhof je mikrofon. Prav, dragi gledalke in gledalci, z zamikom seveda, daj še Denhofa vklopimo, no. Ena, je v redu? Dobro? Ha? Mi to delamo 3-krat na teden, bo. Denhovo, tu. Hello, ladies.
To je super.
Če ni videl?
Dvignem?
Ne, nekaj čujem zraven. Viš, da je nekaj odprto? Ja, Miha, si ga čul? Kaj naredil?
Čakaj, dajmo se samo zmeniti.
Nima muzo. Kaj bomo snemali?
Ti jemlješ zvok?
Jaz jemljem zvok od Gregeja.
Od Gregeja?
Jaz jemljem zvok od Gregeja, od Gregeja, od SDI Gregeja. Ne?
Ja, kaj, muho imamo gor, ali kaj?
Ja, ne, muha je na mešalkah, je samo, ja, zaradi konektorov, ne
Ja,
zaradi drugega.
se pravi,
Tako da to je to.
jaz imam pa tu torej slovensko.
Ti imaš pa slovensko samo, ja.
Slovensko rekel, ja.
In ti snemaš kartice, on ne snema kartice. Čeprav nič ne je bilo narobe, glede na to sta dve kartici. Ja, v torbi ob strani je, z vami dve, ja, ob strani je v rumeni. V redu? Je v redu, John? Je? Yes? Pazim, da mi ne bo šlo v pik. Prosim te lepo. On se zna dreti.
Me slišiš? V redu? Ok. Sebe bi jaz slišal, slušalka gre? Ja? Ampak jaz bi sebe slišal. Ne gre?
Ne gre. Njega moraš poslušati.
A ja. I got it.
Ne, to bi se lahko normalno govoril.
Ok. Se slišiva? Dobro. Tebe tudi, Maša? Vidimo se.
Ena, dva. Ena, 6. Kaj je sklopljen?
own people involved in talking to you guys. For me today, it's a little bit about some of my personal experiences or my personal philosophies about how to manage your career. So a lot of this is just stuff I've gathered over a career of about 26 years in banking. But we're also going to have a series of events where we have experts. For example, John Locke is going to talk about fundamentals of risk management, or we can get other people to talk about other very specific ideas. So the idea is this is using our own people to talk to us about what we can do better. So I hope you enjoyed today. Shall we start officially? Yeah. No, because I'm more interested in the audience than in the video person.
V takem številu tu očitno jih je nekaj ostalo pred računalniki. Mislim, da je razvoj kariere zelo močno povezan z izobraževanjem, zato vas vabim, da pogledate tudi druge izobraževalne dogodke in se jih udeležite. Tokrat delamo prvič live, upam, da bo uspešno za vse tiste, ki nas spremljajo. Zdaj, kar bi vas rada opozorila, vsi, ki potrebujete slušalke, so zadaj za prevod. Kar vzamete jih, če ne, bo podnaslovljeno naknadno, live streaming bo podnaslovljen. Kar se tiče mikrofona, ne sliši se, namenjen je streamingu, tako da, ko boste postavljali vprašanja, kar pogumno. Zdaj pa predajam gospodu predsedniku uprave, gospodu Johnu Michaelu Denhofu.
Thanks. I think I have Mike already. Hello everyone, as I said, I'm John Denhof. I'm here to basically just share with you guys some of the things I've picked up throughout my career for what it's worth. So this isn't trademarked, it's nothing professionally done, it's just my personal views, but it's interesting that we got so many of you guys signed up to come listen to it. So please do ask questions as I go through, just raise your hand or interrupt me. I want this to be as much as possible a dialogue where you can ask questions, and I'll leave some time at the end for questions if you have as well. The agenda is as follows. We're going to talk a little bit about my career path, just a few words. Some of the things that I, as CEO, think are useful tips for you guys about how to make a career. We all know there's a lot of changes at Nova KBM, and the expectations are obviously constantly changing. So I want to give you guys some clues and insights from my perspective about how do you build a successful career at the bank we're building. And hopefully you'll learn some new things. Hopefully a lot of it you'll be doing already, but at least we'll talk about what does it take to be successful in today's bank. Do I need to pause for translation, or should I just keep going?
No, just keep going.
Okay, because
so just keep going.
Okay, well, and again, if anybody is having trouble, just let me know, because we do have translator at hand. We'll talk a little bit about some of the drivers. This is a little piece of pie I developed myself, but it's more basics that we'll talk through. And then we'll talk about some interesting typical or difficult situations at work that you may face. And this is where I hope the dialogue becomes quite interactive, where we can talk about, I don't know, some of the toughest things that I faced or that you faced in your careers, and what are some tips for how to deal with those. And last but not least, we'll have a few words on client excellence and questions, okay? So with that, I'll talk about my career path. It's pretty simple. I started my career as a consultant in Germany. I studied German and politics in the US, and I think my big personal dream was to see the world and get out of the US. I came from a small town of 15,000 people, so it's 1/10 the size of Maribor is my hometown, so it's pretty much a farming area. And I dreamed of seeing, Paris and Rome and Asia and Europe and everywhere I could get. So I did spend, after 2 years consulting in Germany, about 25 years at Citibank, where I had the great privilege to actually move geographically a lot. I was in Madrid, New York, Pakistan, I was in London, I was in Central Europe all over the place. I was in Singapore twice. And I think I'm forgetting some. I was in the US too. But I was always really excited about the globality of a company like Citigroup. And I learned a lot about how things are done in one place can be brought to another place to be applied. So I think that's part of the reason why I'm here. And what is a pretty local business where we're looking to become best in class. We can learn a lot from outside Slovenia, as well as we can learn a lot from the best inside Slovenia. So that's what's interesting about my career. I've been here now, I think I got here officially in March 1 I started, but technically I was already here beginning of the year. So it's been about 6 months. So I know enough to be dangerous, but I don't know enough to know what I'm talking about yet, which is why I rely on a lot of you guys. But anyway, that's my career in a nutshell. You know, I think when we talk about what does it take to be successful, I came up with just a little bit of a framework, and we'll talk about all these. One is the mindset and concept of adding value. The next one is about ownership and accountability. The next is around managing your career, which is something I think you have to be proactively doing all the time. The next is around managing your boss. This is a fun one because everybody thinks the boss manages the employee. And I would tell you guys it's actually not how it works. The other is leading by example, so that's an important one. Finding inspiration is important. And last but not least, finding your own energy and balance. So, you know, I didn't get this out of a textbook. I wrote this down in the car. And then Critty was nice enough to do the slides for me. But I didn't prepare this a lot because I purposely think you have to talk from the heart and you have to manage a little bit with what you know are the right basics. So these are just, to me, things that if you guys are with me in a working meeting, you'll see them come up all the time. I think a lot of you who I work with, I see some familiar faces. You'll recognize a lot of these behaviors when you watch me. And I think these are some things that are good to maybe learn about and pick up on. So let's start with the first one, which is adding value. So, you know, what is adding value? I think a lot of it is about having a mindset where you're clear, what do I do for this bank? You know, if I ask you, what's your value add? You know, you can say, I'm the data protection officer. I think that's the wrong answer. I think that's a chair you sit in. It's just a chair. You know, you could say, I'm a branch manager. Yeah, but that's just a role. It's a chair. The value add is the value you personally bring to those around you. It's probably a lot to do with the people you're directly interfacing with. It might be internal clients. It might be customers if you face off with customers. But I think a really good manager, a really good career-focused individual knows what value they provide. You know, I'm just picking on Mitya because he's sitting right here. If he says, look, I run the audit department. My value add is I'm significantly upgrading the caliber of that team. I'm improving 3 or 4 processes. I've redesigned the organizational chart. I'm now hiring into that chart. I've increased by about double the number of audits we're going to do with a risk-weighted approach. That's kind of a statement of the value add. And these are real live examples of stuff he knows. I've been beating him up because I expect more value add than what we had in the past. And I think that's a good example that you guys can apply. So, you know, adding value is something you should think about. I think if you understand your value add, you can use it as a little bit of a cost-benefit framework. You can say, look, I'm a resource, whatever your salary is, that's your cost, right, to the bank. So hopefully you're adding more value than the cost to the bank. If you're not, something's wrong, right? And you know, I can say I'm CEO, I could say, oh, my value add is all the revenue of the bank, but I don't really believe that. I'm not the one, you know, selling all the products, or I'm not, you know, delivering anything from a technology standpoint. I'm not solving legal cases. I'm not working on workout cases directly. My value add's probably more around creating the strategy, getting alignment, motivating large groups of people, and then I think, you know, basically making sure we're tracking the progress. That's my personal value add. So I think you guys have to ask yourselves the same. What's your value add? Can you articulate it? And can you expand on it, right? And the last thing I wanted to say on this page was, you know, whatever space you occupy, whatever chair you're in, you have to think about what's your personal signature. You know, I remember earlier in my career, there were some products I launched. It was my idea. I made sure, you know, we built the specs, made sure we had a growth plan. And some of those projects I think did pretty well. Others flopped miserably. I only remember the good ones. But important was I had my personal signature on those things. And I think if you manage that your personal signature is very clear, you know, if you think about your job in the next 2 years, let's say, 3 years maybe, that you'll do this particular job, maybe it'll be longer, you should think about what are the 2 or 3 bullet points on your CV that you want to have. You know, it's not, I can't just say I was CEO of Nova KBM. I need to say I executed a turnaround where the EBIT went from X to Y, where, you know, we optimized our regulator perception, where we did a significant turnaround. That's what I want to happen here. So if you're clear on what you want to happen, it starts to affect your daily behaviors about, am I doing something today which is helping me get that headline I need 2 or 3 years down the road? So this is the concept of value add. Let me just pause if anybody has questions. Is that clear? Am I talking understandably, not too fast? Good. Okay. Next one. This is one I think is a real interesting one here. Basically acting like an owner, being accountable. It sounds obvious, but it's not. When I come to Slovenia, having worked in, 7 or 8 different markets around the world, I find that the culture here is one, because of what happened largely in financial services over the last several years, people don't naturally have a bias to be accountable for their areas. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we did a lot of bad loans in the market. People were blamed if they took risks. It was safer to just follow the process, or better, safer to do nothing. But I don't think in the bank we're building, that's a good strategy anymore. We're actually looking for people who are risk takers, but who take risks in a calculated manner. We want to get stuff done. We want to get products improved. We want to have a better strategy and a better execution than competitors that are not all that bad. So if we're going to do that, we need people who are really going to, be owners. There's one story I always remember. My boss told me this a long, long time ago. He said, this was in banking. He was in front of a branch, and he was opening the branch, and he saw a guy walk up to the shop across the street, and there was a piece of garbage kind of stuck on the floor. So the guy went in, he got a knife, it was like chewing gum or something. He scrubbed it off and picked it up because he was the owner of that shop. And so that branch manager said, oh, if that gum was stuck on the door of the branch of our bank, when the staff comes in, would they clean it up, or would they say it's somebody else's job? I think most people wouldn't stop and pick it up. But an owner of that company, where it says, it's John's Automobiles, yeah, if you were the owner, you'd pick that up. And I think that's just maybe a little anecdote that lets you know true owners, they own it. So if they make a mistake, you know what they do? They escalate. They say, I have to call Apollo. I said, guys, guess what? We made a mistake. We missed the deadline. Something I had to do this week. I'm accountable. We're fixing it. We know what we did wrong, and we know what we need to do now. Usually the answer is good. Thanks for letting us know. People are usually, in a management chair, very positively surprised if you escalate errors or mistakes proactively with the intent to fix it, because it exemplifies ownership. The real problem is if you hope nobody finds out about it and you don't talk about it, and then it comes up. Often these kind of problems, they fester and they get bigger and bigger. I talked a lot in some of the culture workshops we had recently about being transparent. And I think you guys, you have to be, everybody takes credit for the successes, so I don't need to tell you to do that. But, you also need to say, look, I own the space, I own it end to end. People who act like owners are the ones who tend to get the promotions. Most times, I've seen people come to me, they don't ask for a promotion, or it's not me offering the promotion. They're actually already doing the work, and then we formalize it. That's how it works. So if you want to be promoted, just start doing the job. Nobody will tell you no. Just start owning the space. Okay? What else? Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about under the concept of ownership is something I witnessed at Nova KBM on the board. When I first came, I sat through 3 or 4 different board meetings, and I was kind of shocked negatively about the quality of some of the proposals reaching the board. You get, I won't pick on anyone, but some of the B1s would come and say, we have a problem, and it's all documented here to the board, here you go. I say, well, okay, but you run the area, you own the space, so have you thought through what are the options? And they say, well, not really. I say, okay, have you evaluated the options? Not really. But I think a good proposal, really the people who know most about the space should be owning it and proposing exactly what needs to be done. So if a proposal comes saying, look, here's the issue, we evaluated 3 options, clearly one is better and the other 2 don't work, this requires a little bit of investment, we know what we need to do, dear board, please sign off. Those are the easiest proposals to get through the board. I think we're getting better at that as a bank because we keep sending stuff back. So I don't mean to be difficult, but I do expect all of you guys, whatever you're proposing, if it comes to the board, not because I want it to be worked out perfectly, but it just, you guys should be doing it. If it's about procurement and you're the one who's buying the service and marketing, I'm picking on you now because you're here, you most likely know better the ins and outs of the, but if I find out not really asking yourself tough questions, then we'd often send it back, right? So I think that's just another good example that you see in everyday business around how to act like an owner. And I really encourage you guys, the culture we want, the type of resources we want, are people who really going to just stand up and do it. People rarely will tell you how to do your jobs. And I think understanding what happened in the past, people are often afraid to take those steps. But I would encourage you guys, be bold and take risks. You'll do better in the future. Okay, moving on. Anybody remember what the third one was? It was managing your career. Now, this is an interesting one because I think some of what I'm going to say is painfully obvious. But when I talk to a lot of people one-on-one, they haven't thought of it this way. So maybe this is of use to you, maybe you heard it before. But I think when it comes to managing your career, the first thing you have to do is have an ambition. And just look around. Does anybody here have a career ambition they want to volunteer? I could pick on someone. I'd like to do it. Okay, well, I have a stated career ambition, and I keep a career journal. I keep a journal about life, too. So I write about sports events I thought I did well, or I write about my family, or I write about my vacations, and I write about my career. So I know where I want to be in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. I hope to be retired in 5, but it looks like I'm a little bit off track. But if things go really well with Nova KBM, there's a good chance I can meet my own goals. And then I think about, okay, what's in my way or what's supporting me to reach those goals? What I recommend people do is not only to have a career aspiration, you need a plan. It's just like if you're launching a product or you're launching a technology, software upgrade, you need to plan it, right? So usually the good thing to start with is you talk to your boss about your career ambition. I recommend your ambition shouldn't be secret. Like a lot of people have ambitions. Maybe they say, I want to be the CEO after you fail, John. I say, great, I will help you, but seriously, jokes aside, have you got a plan? And they say, well, what kind of plan would you have for the next job you want? Usually, you have to think about, what does your boss think you're capable of? So I always start with my boss. I say, do you think I'm capable of that job I want? And if the boss says yes, great. Then you say, can I count on your support at the right time? They say yes, you're done, great. But usually the bosses will say, well, that's a stretch for you, maybe in the future, but you should ask, what are the gaps? What is stopping me from getting that role now? And often your boss has a pretty good idea of what you need to do better. And it's a perspective you don't have. Everybody looks in the mirror, they have a view of themselves. But do you guys really know what your boss thinks of you? I bet you most of you don't. And I bet, knowing the culture here, most people don't really sit in front of the boss and say, how good am I really? I shouldn't say this, but Midia's laughing because we had this discussion already. You should tell your boss, look, it's halfway through the year. I know you're going to rate me at the end of the year, so just tell me now how I'm doing. Am I a 1, perfect? Am I a 3, average, meeting expectations? Am I 5, total fail? Where am I? Usually the boss will wiggle out of it. But you say, okay, well, tell me what I'm doing well. Tell me what's stopping me from getting the job I want next. And if you get that feedback, you can build a very focused plan around it. The best thing is when your boss tells you something very specific. They say, yeah, your English isn't good enough. Just an example. Then you say, great, why don't you put me in English classes? Let's formalize that. And that's this concept of an IDP, that's an individual development plan. That's what I recommend you guys work out with your bosses. Anybody who works for me or works down with me can talk to me about it. I'll give you advice. Tell me what's your ambition. I'll tell you some things to think about. It's an open door policy. You should come talk to me or talk to your boss. But it's a good thing to do is make your ambition known. Talk to your boss about it, get feedback, and then start to articulate it in terms of a plan where your boss is actually committed to help you. Once you oblige your boss to help you get English classes or, develop SaaS programming skills or learn more about risk or whatever. Please.
They have ambition just to stay alive.
Yeah. I'm glad you say that provocatively because I agree with that. So I'm talking to the people who come to a workshop like this. I'm assuming you want to move your career forward. Otherwise, why would you come to a managing your career workshop? But I do agree with you. There's a large population in our ranks that's very disengaged. If you look at the VOE survey, which I'm going to present the results of in 2 days to the B1 and the B2 managers, you'll see that about 1/3 of the population is highly disengaged. They don't give a shit. And you know what? I think those people should leave. So part of managing your career may be realizing you don't fit with the type of culture I'm describing. Because what I'm describing is what's coming, not what's there now. I agree with you, it's not the status quo, but I'm talking about tomorrow. So I do agree with you that there's people who don't act like owners. They're actually roadblocks. They're worse than neutral. They're actually blocking progress. So we've seen some individuals like that. I think you'll see the current board is quite willing to take them out of play because we need to remove roadblocks for you guys. It's not a nice thing to talk about, but I did promise I'd be honest, and that's partly what we need to do with the agenda here is we need to count on people who are qualified and motivated to tackle the challenges at hand. That's why I'm talking about if you want the change to happen, things to think about moving ahead. But I agree with you.
We see the route in which way we are going. So we still don't see it. Just to be afraid of losing our jobs. I don't know. Maybe some of them who came recently have other opinion, but generally is opinion like this.
No, I agree.
It's going to be a negotiation in the future because this institution won't last long.
I agree. And this is why, again, if you remember, I started with the concept of value add. If you're not adding value and you're in the way, I'm going to ask you to leave. So I don't need the union to fire people. I need to follow the rules. But, you know, again, my agenda isn't to fire people. I'm trying to turn the place around. I'm trying to focus on growing the customer satisfaction scores. Right now, we're one of the worst in the market. Trying to focus on the voice of the employee scores. Right now, they're very low, 34%. It's about to be announced. You look at the profitability. The honest truth is we're not making enough revenue to cover our heavy expense base if you take out a lot of the provisions, one-timers, cost of credit. So there's a need to change. I agree with you. But you know, you have to want to change before you're going to be participating in the change. Well, hopefully the time has come. I'm committed to it. My success is pinned to it. So if you know enough about the strategy, you will know I committed my personal reputation and basically my personal family stake against whether or not we achieve it. So my head's on the chopping block, and I encourage you guys to come with me. I think we can make a lot of change here. The good news is I see huge opportunities every meeting I go to. A lot of what we have to do is just get the basics right. We're not trying to solve world hunger here. We're trying to simplify products. We're trying to come up with a better set of value propositions. We're trying to sell through more channels, trying to lift service levels, create better service standards. It's really simple stuff, but it does require willingness, talent, and right mindset. Okay, but thanks for raising that. You got it.
I'm from workout, and I believe I'm the best one. Not only.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. What's your name?
Zoran.
Zoran. Okay. Hi.
Yeah, I believe I'm the best one. Not because I said so or I think so, because of my indexes. Okay. Okay. So let's make a deal. I'm not interested in this mid-level or all kind of bullshit. If I clean my desk in 1 year, you will offer me executive position.
Let me tell you what I'm working on.
No. Of course, I will have positive plan, highly positive plan. I also have, at the moment, I'm far in advance of any plans. But if I manage to finish to clean my desk in the end of the year or in, let's say, 12-month period, if I don't, I'm out.
Well, I need to understand what your desk involves because I don't know if your targets are too easy or not. But let me tell you what I'm working on. I just sat down with John Locke to come out with a variable compensation scheme for the workout unit, which allows him to pay you up to 40% more if you clean your desk. So while I'm not going to promote you in 1 year for doing your job, I'll fire you if you don't. I'm willing to pay you a lot more and consider you for promotion.
I'm not interested in
I know,
money.
but you need. I know, but obviously mobility follows the role. But I like the attitude, and I wouldn't mind if we sat and talked about your goals. But what I also agree with John is the targets are going to get harder. So you have to realize we're talking about the desk that's coming your way too.
Fair enough.
Not the desk that was there. But I mean, workout. I will tell you, if you look at the results for the next 2 years of this bank, it's actually going to be made or broken by whether workout meets the targets. You probably know it because you know the type of volumes we're talking about, but this is why we said we need proper target setting, proper variable comp, and career mobility is a part of that. So I don't think getting promoted to an executive is just about doing your job for 1 year. It took me 25 years to get to this role. So I'll make you a deal. If you clean your desk for 12 years, I think you have a better shot than me, because I'm not going to be around that long. Okay? But anyway, I like the attitude, and I think that's the ownership attitude, a good example of it, of what I'm looking for. So we're going to start paying people more. We're going to start, I mean, if you look at branches, I think some of you guys are probably from the branch network. We didn't even have sales targets.
I know.
So you have to walk a little before you can run. But
For me, there's only two ways, up or out. I'm not interested to say 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years on the same seat.
okay, that's good, because I'm going to also talk about career rotations, which I think is fundamental. So hear me out, but let's talk, Zoran, about that. I'm very pleased by your response. Does anybody else want to take a challenge or speak up? Otherwise, I'll continue the speech. So when I come back to managing your career, one thing I would tell you guys is if you're talking about that next step up or a lateral rotation within the bank, one thing one of my bosses told me early in my career that gave me a lot of confidence, he said, John, you probably already know what you need to know to be successful. So don't keep waiting to think, you need to get some degree or have some longer experience doing what you're doing. I think all of you guys probably could do each other's roles or a higher up role. So I really encourage people to start taking some of those risks. When the career chances come up, don't doubt yourself, put your hand up. Obviously, Zoran doesn't have any fears. But a lot of times I meet people who are trying to talk into taking a promotion. They're the best qualified person in the bank and they don't want it. I've seen a lot of that here. So I'm probably arguing to the converted here, but that's, I think, an important mindset around managing your career. And last but not least, one thing that's helped me personally was getting a mentor. When I was at Citibank, I got a mentor. I purposely chose a lady who was the expert at the area I was weakest at. And then I engaged with her, getting feedback, what are my gaps, how am I perceived. She told me a lot of things about my reputation I didn't know. And not only did she encourage me to work towards a business head role, she actually threw my name in the hat. So I had to talk with her. I said, there's this country manager head of Turkey available. And she said, are you interested? I said, no, I'm not ready. So she went and put my name in anyway. And I got a call, your interview is up. And I said, she put my name in the hat. And I ended up taking the job. And I went through this phase myself where I kind of doubted, am I ready? And then I thought about my boss's words. You probably know what you need to know already. Just give it a shot. Anyway, you learn a lot by doing. Most of the stuff we know doesn't come from a classroom or a lecture even. It comes from actually doing it. So don't doubt yourself. Okay? I'll just take a time check. I think we're good. Okay, so this is a fun one. I think managing your boss is interesting. Most people have this traditional mindset that, the boss tells me what I need to do and I just follow orders. But I don't think the bank that we want is going to function that way, because we need to count on the collective wisdom and strength of the group. So I think you guys, first of all, if your boss has silly ideas or he's not focused on maybe the right priorities, I think it's your job to tell him, to say, hey, we think, sometimes some of our managers aren't the best listeners. Sometimes they are new in the position and they're not used to dealing with small or even large groups of people. So I think it's important for the people in the team to guide them. I would tell you, a lot of what I do or focus on are impulses I get from you guys, my one-down team or people I meet in meetings like this. So I think you guys should not be shy about giving your boss signals around, hey, we need to focus on this strategically, or we're missing a big market opportunity. We talked about making sure he knows about your career aspects and aspirations. It's important. So you should manage your boss. I think the boss's job is really to remove roadblocks. So I think the boss should expect you do your job and you follow up and you execute stuff that's agreed. So that's your job. But there's politics getting in the way, or there's, regulation is conflicting, or there's teams not supporting you. That's where you need to get your boss involved and get them active. If the boss isn't doing it, I think it's very appropriate to go to the boss's boss. There's kind of an art to that. You don't want to go around your boss's back. But I do think people should have the courage to say, hey, if my boss isn't listening and we see a big opportunity, then it should be part of a bigger discussion. Sometimes leadership gaps are an issue at this place or almost any place I've ever worked. So you guys should also be confident about managing your boss. Usually when it comes time to evaluate people for promotions or increases or whatever, they remember the people who guided them. You can do it in a nice way. A lot of times you want to give your boss feedback to say, hey, you're not listening, this is a big opportunity. You don't want to do that in front of the team, right? You maybe talk one-on-one, over coffee, but I would encourage you guys, give your boss a lot of impulses about what we need to do. Don't assume your boss knows everything, because they may know, they may not, but you won't know until you talk about it, okay? What the other analogy I would use, I think you guys know about golf, where you tee up the golf ball on a little tee and you hit it. So I think it's your guys' job to tee up opportunities for the boss. The boss, if he's the one who's going to drive it forward, get the funding and get the support needed and help execute it and help clear those roadblocks, you need to have an agenda of things you want to get done and tee those up. So mentally, when I think about adding value, I think about, okay, what balls am I teeing up for my bosses? Many of us have multiple bosses, so you sometimes have to, in fact, work with multiple people. And I think that's a good thing. It's probably good to be over-communicating. It's good to send status. If you're working on a complicated project and you don't feel like people are helping you or supporting you, it's probably pretty good to use dashboards to say, yeah, we're stuck. Things are turning red because I'm not getting the support I need. And those tend to get the boss to respond better. So I would use some of those techniques in your everyday work to try to get support and attention you need. Any questions on managing your boss? I'll come to some examples later. The next one is leading by example. And again, this is more for those of you who are already leading people or who are soon to take on leadership roles. I do think you have to lead by example. So part of it is acting like an owner and doing those things we talked about, taking risks like we talked about. If your team sees you doing this stuff, when we make mistakes, backing them, owning up, saying, okay, my team made a mistake, I'm the owner, I'll raise my hand, I'll go talk to the higher ups. I think those are good examples of what leaders can do to gain credibility with their teams and actually to help the agenda. So it shouldn't be about, who made the mistake. It should be about how do we fix it collectively and moving forward. A lot of people I meet at Nova KBM, they say, oh, I need to tell you about all the history of what happened in this space. And I often say to them, I'm not really all that interested in the past. I don't really care who screwed up. I don't care who was corrupt. I just want to make the best commercial decisions we can and extract value out of the business. So let's just not focus on the past. Let's focus on the future. And I think signals like that are important too when you talk about what can we do collectively as a team. The other thing I think leaders should do is don't accept substandard work. If your team's coming to you with stuff half-baked, proposals that aren't thought through as we talked about, or I see a lot of work full of typos. I see work where the numbers in the same page are inconsistent. I see a lot of work where the outcomes aren't really logical. I think it's very appropriate for a boss to send that stuff back for rework. I learned in my career early on, often it's quicker for me to just fix it, but I tend to rather push it down because I want people to learn from the experience if there's time and have them figure out, the bar's raised, I need to come with a better piece of work without any personal agenda. But I think if you see your boss keep sending stuff back, that's also a good sign that maybe the bar's being raised on you. I think very intentionally, we talked about the turnaround I want to happen at Nova KBM. I think it's about raising the bar. So as we talked about targets, I was kind of joking about it, but we actually intending to keep increasing sales targets. So just because you hit targets one year doesn't mean the targets are always going to stay, right? Because we know we need to do as well as the best in class in this market, and ideally we're aiming to be the best in the region. So we want to look at productivity benchmarks for salespeople, or workout, or for products. We want to have products which are clearly the best value for clients if they study it. And that's what we're trying to rethink some of the things. So sometimes the work I see cuts it, sometimes it doesn't, but we should challenge it if it's not good enough. And you guys should also challenge inputs you get. All of us are in roles pretty much where you depend on somebody else. Might be technology or ops or audit or whatever. So if you're getting your peers not giving you enough support, first thing to do is probably tell them. A lot of times I hear grumbling and I say, did you tell the person? Oh no. Okay, well, but if you're clear on what you expect and you're nice about it, you don't have to be a jerk, but you can be nice about, hey, I really need this thing programmed by the legal due date. Seems fair. Might mean somebody has to work over a weekend, but I think that's okay if it's something that's critical, right? Okay, that's leading by example. Last one, this is a picture I just sent for fun because I think all of us need to have fun at work. If you're really coming in here just because it's to pay the bills, and no matter what happens, you're never leaving the role, whether you get chances or not, and we talked about some of this disengaged population, I don't think you're going to do well here. I think you have to bring your own passion, you have to bring your own energy, and you have to bring your own fun. So this picture is of me mountain biking. That's my passion. I love Maribor because there's all kinds of hills. So you can pedal here. I try to get out every other day at least, if not every day. In the summer, it's great. In winter, when it was minus 18, a little tough. But that's a good thing there's Body Fit down the road. But anyway, I think all of us should think about what motivates you to come to work, what motivates you at work, and what motivates you outside of work. Because it's extremely important. You can't inspire people or lead people if you don't have something to talk about besides workout. I mean, I'm sorry, but and I'm sure you love it, and I love it. But I also, when I work with you guys, I want to know what kind of people are you guys. So I think it's good to colleagues around you, invite them out for a beer or a coffee. It's a good way to connect. Ask people about, I see people who sit next to each other maybe 10 years, and they don't know the names of each other's children. Now here, maybe that's not the case so much because it's a small town and many of you have spent your lives here, but it is important to, I think, find that inspiration somewhere outside the workplace. You have to bring the passion in, something you can tap into. For many of us, it might be your families. That's a big passion for me too. Or your gardening, or your hobbies, or I don't know, maybe the brands you like to shop for. I don't know, but it doesn't matter what it is. You have to find it and use it.
What's the timing in 10 kilometers?
For running, I can do a 5-minute mile. At least I could.
This is like 3.45 from
Okay. Anyway, I'm not challenging you on a race either. Okay. And then last but not least, there's this relates to the point I just made. You also have to bring energy and balance. I don't really think people should come to work and think that success depends on never taking vacations. I come from the States, and in the States, a lot of people, they have 2 weeks vacation only, and they don't take it. And I always say, what a fool. You have 2 weeks, you should be spending that with your family, raising your kids, or having fun, or doing whatever you do. It might be traveling or seeing stuff. So I encourage people, take your vacations, live life to the fullest, because we're in it for the long run. I'm here for a 5-year agenda, so I'm not interested in grinding people to work 3 weekends in a row unless there's something urgent for a deadline like we had this week. But it's important that people understand this is a marathon we're running, not a sprint. So you have to find your energy and balance, keeping your spouses happy, if for most of you guys think are married, is important, because if the spouse isn't happy, then you're not going to be too effective at your job. So you have to factor these things into your career planning. You can't just work 24/7, expect you're going to be wildly successful if you're neglecting those people who you depend on and care about. Energy is something, I also think, people talk about skill sets you need. If I'm a technologist, do I know the right codes? Do I have the right protocols? But I actually think energy is something a lot of people forget to think about. And, I find energy comes partly through exercise, partly through how you manage your meetings. Sometimes you guys will see me, I run from the 6th floor down and back up. And by the time I do that, most cases I was feeling fatigue and getting fuzzy and starting to maybe lose focus on a meeting because I tend to go back to back to back to back all day long. You run down the stairs up and back, you guys will have a lot of energy. Just try it once. It's horrible the first 3 flights, but by the time you get up, you'll be breathing. And that's just one tip I would give you guys about you can manage a high energy level throughout the day through little tips like that. Obviously, getting sleep is important. Some people like to burn the candle at both ends and party hard. That's good too, it gives inspiration, but you also have to manage the energy. So try to keep it in balance. But also, energy comes from, I think, a lot of things around us. I think having a team that's fun kind of not only inspires yourself, but inspires those around you. So I think if you're the person who say, hey, it's Friday, I brought a cake in because maybe no reason, maybe just because it's Friday, or maybe it's somebody's birthday. Those are little things that start to create, I think, a positive energy in the teams. And that's something you guys can do, with the groups around you, is start to be that catalyst of energy. I think if you stick a little energy in, it starts to come back to you more full. So I encourage you guys to think about some of these things. So that's my wheel of tips for what they're worth, and you're welcome to quote me on any of these. I wanted to talk a little bit about client excellence because I think this is an important focus area of the bank going forward. I think you guys should hopefully have seen the strategy by now. I know this was emailed to everybody. We've been talking to all the managers. I'm talking to the managers again. But we're really focused on trying to be the best bank in Slovenia, focusing on these things. If you look at client excellence, it's one of the key pillars. And we are using, with the owners of this bank, client satisfaction scores as one of the key metrics. So we're doing a lot to try to move our client satisfaction scores from now, what are pretty low scores. They're actually, believe it or not, second worst in the market, to where I hope we're at least top quarter as an objective over 5 years. It's doable because 5 years is a long time, but it doesn't mean we're going to need to change processes and make them a lot simpler for clients. We're going to simplify our products and make them better, but easier to understand. And it means we need to execute a whole host of programs a lot better. So you're going to see a lot more coming around this. This is something we're going to be kicking off, I think it's the 22nd, which is this week, in the town hall with your managers, and it'll start to trickle down. But you will start to see a lot more around values, because values are, I think, all focused around serving the client better, whether you're talking about integrity or excellence itself or the other ones, very key. But the framework is really about we're going to start listening to our customers and listening to ourselves. So if you guys are in parts of the bank where you think we're doing something that negatively impacts our customers, or that it's kind of bureaucratic and not adding any value, I would really appreciate it if you'd raise those suggestions. Some of them we can action, some we can't, but we want to collect them all and study them. And I think it's really important that you guys, whether you're in the farthest away branch or you're right here in the headquarter, thinking about what can we do to make the interaction with the bank less friction for the client. And if we can delight customers, that's really where we want to go. I think if you talk about Apollo, when I told them I don't want to just manage this bank, when I talk about the strategy around just financials, cutting costs, it's not what I want to do. I want to grow revenues. I want to invest in channels, invest in people. I want to use client satisfaction scores as a key measure equal to growth and profitability equal, and it is in my scorecard now. And in all your scorecards are having a concept of these same shared goals as they trickle down. I think it's very important to understand that Apollo totally understands that adding value to this business, because that's ultimately what they want to do, is increase the value in this bank, involves delivering better service to our clients. And in addition, when we talk about culture and talent, the main metric being voice of the employee, we know it's pretty low score. We also have high ambitions to almost double it. So we need to do, if we're going to motivate clients to be happy, we need to motivate our staff to deliver good service. So it's very interrelated. So you guys will hear more about the VOE action plan, basically the employee satisfaction action plan, and the client excellence program, both of which are intending to drive better service, and basically making us the better employer's choice. So you'll hear more about these areas from me every time I talk, from the management board every time we talk, and I think you'll hopefully start to see a lot of the programs reaching all parts of the organization. If you're not, let me know, and I'll talk to your managers to make sure that they're actually carrying the message. But I'm also relaying the message to you guys directly, because I think, if you want to know what's important to me, it's these things. So if you can articulate your value add in one of these buckets, which I'm sure many of you can, and all of you could, then you'll certainly be talking my language, okay? Okay, so I got a couple questions in advance. I have to confess I didn't have time to read them, so I'd rather just do it ad hoc. Why don't you guys tell me about some really tough situations you faced, and we can talk as a group around what might be a good way to handle that. You can ask me what I think. It might be the wrong answer, but it's what I would do. Or maybe you can get some sense from your peers. But does anybody have anything they want to volunteer about a tough situation, whether it's career or beyond that?
It's not basically specific tough situation, but it has more to do with the culture of our bank.
Okay.
As I see at the moment, we are acting like Sony. We are splitting the division, workout division, the corporate division, the retail division, the support division, back office, you name it. And everybody is following their own P&L line. Sony failed. Apple is working completely different, as you know. There's one P&L line, no division, everybody breathes as one. This is sometimes a situation where we have, at least in workout, some problems.
Yeah, well, I believe people need clear individual goals and shared goals, which is why the goals I was talking about, if I go back a page, I think it's here, all these 5 pillars have 2 or 3 goals each, which I said these are the franchise-wide goals. So I think you guys will all see, if you're at a B1 level or a B2 level, these goals will be in your scorecards. And so we are trying to move the organization from being silo-based, which is behavior I also have witnessed, to more of a franchise-wide focus. But you also have to keep in mind we have very different segments. I mean, a corporate client, is very different from an individual retail client in, some part of the country. So we have to some extent, have KPIs which reflect who are we serving. And workout's a good example where there's a big book to clean up there, so we need people who are really dedicated to that. But I do believe shared goals and individual goals are an important part of that. And one thing I would mention is we are holding culture workshops with some of the managers and some of the B2 managers to talk about what's the culture we have, what's the culture we want, and how do we build that bridge. So you'll see there's going to be more coming around how do we change some of this silo thinking or territorial thinking to get people who, in a way, think about the bigger picture more often. But I agree with you, there's a lot of change that needs to happen. Any other thoughts or questions? Otherwise, I'll go to the pre-planned ones. But I would rather do it live. No? Okay. Let's see what came up. Oh yeah, these are some, I haven't read these yet, but openness to change. I think I talked about this throughout the whole presentation. I mean, we need to change as a bank because if we don't grow the profitability, the customer satisfaction scores, the employee satisfaction scores, it's not going to be the best bank, and I don't think it's going to be a very stable, safe place to work. So we need to invest in it to make it better. And I think that requires an openness to change. Have you guys faced any particular areas where you think people are resistant to change in your teams? Anyone care to share? I've run into it. Again, a lot of times, being blunt, I've seen teams where we were talking about low engagement. And when you guys look at the VOE scores, you'll see there's a big block of, even some of our managers are quite disengaged. They admit it when you ask them the engagement questions. Is this a bank where you see your future? Do you think the bank will be successful? These types of questions reveal how engaged are people when they say no. We need to sort of help these people get off the fence and into the contributing part of the quadrant. How you do that, I'm not exactly sure, but you have to lead by example, you have to inspire, you have to push them, you have to pull them, and you have to set clear targets, and you have to support them. You have to do all that and more. But that's part of making change happen, is being open to it. Tough conversations, we touched on. I don't know, have you guys had to have tough conversations with your staffs or with clients? What's the best approach? I mean, if you ask me, it's being open. I mean, I've had to sell to customers in my career. The hardest thing is to tell them you're not approved for a loan, right? Many of you guys are in the lending part of the business. What's the best thing to do? Probably be honest with the client, saying, look, you're not our target profile. We can't lend to you right now, but we can do other things to help you. I mean, I think there's a term called the polite no, but you have to tell them honestly what the case is. When you talk to staff, I've had to talk to staff in parts of the bank where we're closing it down or shifting the location. And obviously those people would rather stay where they are, maybe doing what they're doing, but you have to be open with people. So I would recommend you guys do the same. I mean, it's better to not beat around the bush too much and just come out and tell people where they stand. I think they respond better. That's my personal experience. I don't know if you agree, but it works for me. And I highly recommend that being transparent with people, being honest and open is important. If you're passed up for promotion, this is a question that we got. That's a tough one. I mean, we talked about it a little bit under managing your boss. If a promotion comes up that you thought you should be getting and the other guy gets it next to you, it's probably a good thing first to talk to the boss about, was I considered? They usually would tell you yes or no. If you say no, why? If you were considered and it was a close call, you can get clues as to what behaviors do they expect to see more of, and you can overmanage those. So a lot of it is around developing that individual development plan we talked about. But the other thing you can do is look at the other stakeholders. Most career decisions aren't taken by your boss only. They're taken by a group of people who are the stakeholders. At my level, we try to take decisions as a board. I actually don't take decisions on my own. Even if I know what I want and I'm advocating a decision, I'll still lobby it with them. We'll collectively debate it, and usually we agree 95% of the time. 5% of the time we fight a lot. But it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. We're just debating the topics, not making it personal. So I think that's tips around tough conversations here is you got to debate the facts. Come prepared. But if you're not getting the promotion you thought you should, it's probably best to try to unveil it and understand why. We were talking about rotation. So I also think people who say, hey, I want to get the next level up, a lot of times that boss just isn't moving. They're maybe good, they're best in class, and they're just there, right? So it's very good, I think, in your careers to think about doing career rotations. If you say, okay, I'm in risk, or I'm in business, or I'm in product management, or marketing, or technology, it's very good in your careers to try something different for a year or two. We're going to have a program where you can try somebody's job for a day, and I think we're going to offer CEO for a day if anybody wants to do my job. I can tell you there's good and bad about it, but there's days where it's really fun, and there's days where it's really tough. But I think you guys would learn a lot by sitting in my chair for a day and just seeing what kind of decisions do I take, what type of meetings do I go to, who do I have on the phone, and how do I deal with it. Right or wrong, you'd learn by trying it. And I would encourage you guys in your careers, think about doing a year or two in a different part of the business. If you're in risk, great to do a business role. If you're in business, great to do an ops and tech role. If you're in HR, great to try something that's more quantitative, perhaps. It helps your career. If that's where you want to go as higher up, you need to try it. It doesn't mean you need to be super rocket scientists, but you try it and you learn. I think you guys know what you need to know to do different roles in the bank, but you have to have the courage and take the risks. People want to do a rotation and your boss isn't supporting you, talk to me and we'll see if we can help facilitate. I can't promise it'll happen, but we're intending to set up programs where people rotate, and I think swaps are possible. It's something we want to start doing. Okay, I talked a lot. Let me turn it over to you guys for the last couple of minutes around any questions or thoughts you have or anything you want to share. I like the comments I got so far, so let's make it real.
V slovenščini to rada povedala, pa vprašala, pa bom pol povedala v
Can't hear
angleščini.
you.
Ne bom jaz v obeh jezikih, samo najprej bom v slovenščini. Kaj predlagate za osebe, ki so v zadnjih reorganizacijah izgubile službo, kakšna je njihova pot karierna? So what do you suggest for people who in the past reorganizations stay without jobs? What are their goals for career? How they can build
I didn't
career?
understand the first part. What do I suggest for people who
who
were fired?
Who are fired.
Well, it depends on the reason. I mean, there are those who were fired for probably not doing the job well, and I think most of the other types of firings where there's a business reason, your team in a certain location is being centralized. So it depends a lot on what. But
we are not in a situation that business is bad.
yeah.
Why aren't they offered another job in the bank?
Okay,
because
well,
we are still employing from outside.
Well, I don't know if you're aware, but if you look at the financials, you'd see that the profit the bank makes is largely based on one-timers that don't repeat themselves. So if you look at the revenue stripped out of one-timers, and you look at the expenses, they're quite near to equal. So my agenda, without holding anything back from you guys, is to grow the revenue and to cut the cost. So we don't just guarantee people jobs because this is not a charity. This is a commercial institution, and I know this is a change from the past, but I'm not here to guarantee people's jobs. I'm here to help people find roles where they can add value, because the bank does need a lot of talent to do all the agenda I talked about on that wheel. So if you're able to grow revenues, you should look at a sales job. I'm hiring salespeople. If you are a technologist, yeah, we need people to work on the core banking upgrade because our systems are end of life. They have operational, right? So, I don't know what particular areas, but
they were also doing something to lower the costs, better to manage with.
So the bank
and
strategy.
Their salaries weren't so.
So again, just being honest with you guys, and I think most people will sympathize. We are a conglomeration of 3 banks, right? So we tend to have legacy systems and people in multiple locations. It's not highly efficient to just leave everything the way it is. It's more efficient to, in some cases, centralize it if you can get economies of scale through one location. So that's the answer to your question is, a lot of the areas of the bank are being looked at. Doesn't mean we centralize everything, but if there are cost synergies around doing so, we will. And I suspect that's what's behind the case you're hinting at. But again, you have to keep in mind the value add point I talked about, which is if a unit isn't producing the value compared to the costs, or it can be managed in another way better, that's obviously the intent.
I don't think it's probably the small, but it's do like.
Yeah, if you like, we can debate, but
Imagine how the next reforming our bank is going to be in such in how much psychosis is going to put, because it's just accidentally or in this department is done.
okay. No, but what I would just say in closing, I hear you, and we take these decisions very carefully, but the bank is not a socialist or, charity organization. So we will look at opportunities to try to reduce costs. There will be implications for people, which is why what we're talking about is how do you deal with the changing environment where obviously the commercial ambitions of the bank have changed. But it's a reality that we have to deal with. And I think we do need people who are mobile, open to try new jobs, and in many cases maybe shift chairs and try different approaches. But, things change.
I will try to answer you. Okay, I'm for workout, it's different. But let's say, I have a plan for this year, okay? And for this plan, I got my base salary, okay? It's fair enough. But in first 4 or 5 months, my plan, I was ahead of them for more than 2 million, and PNN line was more than 1.3 million ahead. Okay? That's the answer.
Okay. Anyway, interesting, personal. And what I will say is, let me just, before we end though, I know there's a lot of personal reactions or reactions about a team you guys may have to what I'm saying. I'm talking about things that's helped me in my career that I think is worth sharing. I know the change we're going through is a big change and in some cases impactful and traumatic. So you guys are welcome to come talk to me about it. And what I promised is I'll be honest. You might not like the answer, but I'm telling you the facts as I understand them. So we are looking at trying to change the bank and transform it into something that's commercially much stronger. And that does mean we have to make tough choices. And we will keep making those changes. So if you don't want to be a part of the agenda, I'm sorry, but I don't care. We're going to change this bank and transform it into something stronger, better, and stabler. Because right now the bank is not in a great place. We don't make a ton of profit, and it's not sustainable what we're doing. So we have to make change. The call to action I would give you guys is think about what you're doing, what your team's doing, and to the extent we can extract more value out of your areas, that's really where we're intending to focus. So anyway, hopefully this is of use to many of you guys. Again, happy to talk to you guys one-on-one. Just come by, talk to Brigitte. You can make an appointment anytime. I'd love to chat with you guys more. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.